The ramp that wasn't welcome. When my son Jeremy was born, the doctors told us he might never walk. Spina bifida, they said. I remember sitting in that hospital room, staring at his tiny feet, wondering how we'd ever make it work. Fast forward 10 years, and Jeremy is the most spirited, stubborn, and courageous kid I know. His wheelchair isn't just a mobility device, it's his freedom, his chariot, as he calls it. So when my husband and I finally saved enough to buy a modest home in a quiet neighborhood governed by the Willow Creek HOA, we felt like we'd crossed a milestone. Our first act? Building a small wooden ramp leading up to our front door. It wasn't fancy, but it was solid, safe, and gave Jeremy the independence he deserved. That feeling of progress lasted about 3 days. We got the first notice taped to our front door. Unapproved structure violating architectural harmony. I thought it was a mistake. Surely they'd understand. But when I called the HOA office, I was greeted by a woman with a clipboard voice and zero empathy. You should have submitted a request before making changes to the front elevation of the home, she said. Ramp or not, it affects visual consistency. I tried to explain that Jeremy needed it, that this wasn't about aesthetics, it was about accessibility. But her response was chilling. We have guidelines for these things. Rules are rules. If we let you do this, others will want to add whatever they like to their homes. It becomes chaos. Jeremy watched me from the window that day, wondering why I looked so angry. I didn't have the heart to tell him someone thought his access to the world made the neighborhood look messy. They gave us 10 days to remove the ramp. 10 days, or face daily fines of $200. I couldn't believe it. But Jeremy, oh Jeremy, he didn't get angry. He just said, Mom, we can build it again later. I can still go fast in the hallway. That night, I stayed up researching the Americans with Disabilities Act, HOA law, anything I could use to push back. But it felt like we were David, and they were Goliath with a legal department. I didn't know it then, but the ramp they wanted gone would end up being the thing that changed everything for everyone in Willow Creek. The day. Everything changed. We ended up removing the ramp, reluctantly. Jeremy went back to relying on us to lift him in and out of the house. It was humiliating for him. 10 years old and being carried like a toddler, he started retreating, less talkative, less playful. I hated the HOA for what they'd taken from him. But Jeremy never complained. A few weeks later, our next-door neighbor, Mr. Hamilton, had a stroke. It was around 4:30 in the afternoon. I was at the grocery store and Jeremy was home with my husband. Jeremy was at the window when he saw Mr. Hamilton collapse on his porch. He didn't hesitate. My husband told me later that Jeremy wheeled straight to the back door, where we had secretly rebuilt the ramp behind the house, and got outside faster than my husband could react. He made it to Mr. Hamilton's house, managed to get someone's attention through the Ring doorbell, and within minutes, the paramedics were there. Mr. Hamilton survived, thanks to how quickly Jeremy acted. The EMTs said every second mattered. The story could have ended there, but of course, it didn't. 2 days later, someone from the HOA showed up. Not to thank Jeremy, not to recognize what he'd done, but to scold us. They'd seen the ramp on our security footage, shared by a local news station that picked up the story. They were threatening new fines for non-compliance. That was the moment something inside me snapped. I posted our story online, pictures of Jeremy, the news clip, the HOA letters. It went viral. People across the country commented, shared, sent messages of support. Even a disability rights attorney reached out and offered to help pro bono. The HOA tried to hold their ground, but the pressure was building. And Jeremy? He became something of a local hero. Kids at school started calling him Wheels, and for once, it wasn't in a teasing way. I knew we weren't done. Not yet. The ramp had become a symbol now, and the fight was far from over. The community awakens. After Jeremy's story aired on the local news and bounced around social media for days, something shifted in our neighborhood. People who never spoke to us before started waving, stopping by to say hi, even dropping off cookies and thank you notes for Jeremy. It was surreal. One afternoon, a woman named Ruth, whom I had only seen once at the HOA meetings, knocked on our door. She came with a stack of papers and a determined look in her eyes. "I'm tired of being quiet," she said. "My husband uses a walker. We've been told we can't build a handrail by our stairs because it's unsightly. This HOA is out of control." Turns out Ruth wasn't alone. In the days that followed, our living room turned into something of a strategy hub. People came, families with elderly parents, parents with kids like Jeremy, even a man who'd been fined for painting his fence a slightly different shade of beige. They all had stories, and anger, and now, hope. We started gathering signatures for a petition. At first, it was just to waive the fines and approve Jeremy's ramp. But it evolved. We wanted the bylaws changed. We wanted transparency. We wanted a voice. The HOA board wasn't pleased. They called an emergency meeting. It was packed. More than we'd ever seen. People stood against walls. Others spilled out the door. Jeremy sat in the front row, beaming in his wheelchair like a general in the middle of a peaceful rebellion. Ms. Hartwell, the board president, tried to keep control. "This meeting is for board business only," she insisted. But Ruth stood up and spoke anyway. "This community belongs to all of us, not just 5 people with clipboards." Applause followed. Then I stood. I held up pictures of Jeremy helping Mr. Hamilton. I held up the citation letters. And finally, I held up a new proposal, written with help from the disability rights lawyer, detailing an amendment to the HOA bylaws that guaranteed accessible modifications could not be denied without compelling safety reasons. That night, the board table looked less like a seat of authority and more like a cornered fort. They agreed to consider our petition, but we knew they were buying time, so we took it further. We filed a formal complaint with the County Housing Authority. We pushed the story to a national disability advocacy network. Jeremy even got a video call from a Paralympian who told him, "Sometimes, kid, the biggest wins aren't on a track, but in front yards like yours." And just like that, Willow Creek was no longer just a quiet neighborhood with neat lawns. It was the front line of something bigger, a new chapter for Willow Creek. The pressure didn't let up. Within 2 weeks, Channel 6 News ran a follow-up story. The headline read, "Boy Denied Ramp Sparks National Debate on HOA Power." That same day, a county commissioner announced a proposal to investigate overreach by homeowners associations. The Willow Creek HOA board couldn't hide anymore. At the next meeting, which had to be moved to a local high school auditorium, the entire board sat behind folding tables facing a room filled with neighbors, media, and even a few state officials. Jeremy rolled to the front with his trademark smile and parked beside the podium. People cheered before the meeting even started. Ms. Hartwell tried to maintain authority. She called for order, but the energy in the room had shifted. It wasn't fear, it was resolve. When our petition was presented, it had over 300 signatures, enough to call for a formal recall vote of the current board. That vote passed by a landslide. By the end of the night, every board member had either stepped down or been voted out. What came next was rebuilding. We formed a temporary accessibility committee, which quickly became permanent. Jeremy was given a Community Bravery Award by the mayor. A local business even donated materials and labor to rebuild his ramp, this time as a permanent fixture, with railings, lighting, and a plaque that read, "Freedom begins with access." Lawsuits that had been quietly filed by other residents surfaced, and a class action settlement began to form against the former board members. Ruth became the new board president. Our bylaws were rewritten with clarity and compassion. Every change included community votes and open forums. Accessibility was now not just accepted, it was celebrated. Jeremy started speaking at other HOA meetings in the county, encouraging families to speak up, to demand better. He called them ramp talks. The old wounds didn't disappear overnight, but as Jeremy often said, the ramp wasn't just for me. It was for everyone who's ever been told they don't belong. And now, every time I see him roll up that ramp, push open our front door by himself, and yell, "I'm home!" I remember those 10 days they gave us to tear it down. We gave them their ramp back, but in the end, we took back something far more powerful, our voice. And we're never giving it up again.